Good evening, D23 fans. Please welcome legendary Disney voice actor Jim Cummings.
Good evening and welcome. We've gathered here tonight around the fire as people of all lands have gathered for thousands and thousands of years before us to share the light and share a story as time itself, as old as time, an amazing story that is still being written. And though each of us has our own individual stories to tell, a true adventure emerges when we bring them all together as one. I hope you enjoy our story tonight, Magic After Dark.
kidding, just kidding. My name's Kevin Kern, I'm from the Walt Disney Archives. It is an absolute honor to be here tonight to share in a story, right? How amazing was that introduction from Jim Cummings? Yeah. Instead of me, going on and on, I'm going to turn it over to our colleague, the one, the only, the incomparable Disney historian and Disney Editions author. Please welcome Mr. Graham Allan.
Thank you for that splendid introduction, and huge thanks to Jim Cummings for opening our show there. His was the voice that you heard every night at Epcot, opening Illuminations, Reflections of Earth. And can you believe we're just a few weeks away from the 25th anniversary of that amazing show? The music you just heard, the fanfare that opened Fantasy in the Sky at Disneyland and at Magic Kingdom from 1988. And most of the final act of the original Illuminations show from Epcot, also dating from 88. And in that video, you saw clips of 29 different Disney nighttime spectaculars from around the world, past and present. And if you're not sure you recognize them all, don't worry, we're going to fix that in the next hour. Because we have some amazing talent to join us here on the stage and tell the stories behind those shows and so much more. So please join me in welcoming, first of all, Executive Parades and Spectaculars for Disney Live Entertainment, Stephen Davison. Executive Producer of Disney Live Entertainment, Jennifer Magill. And the uniquely talented consultant, technician, creative artist behind so many of your favorite Disney nighttime shows, Don Dorsey. So many stories to get through here this afternoon. I think maybe we'll start, Don, with you, and tell us a little bit about your own nighttime story.
You know, I thought a lot about this, and I have to say that because I started with Disney almost 49 years ago, I really want to thank everybody that I had the pleasure to work with over the years. Jack Wagner, Jim Christensen, Bob Yanni in particular, who got me introduced into the Lagoon show vernacular, Ron Miziger, Ron Logan, so many people that were so gracious to me and gave me the opportunity to take on challenges and things that I didn't even know I was prepared to do, but allowed me to do that.
Awesome. Jennifer, your story.
Well, I am very grateful to have been working for the Walt Disney Company for over 25 years now. I actually started after I left grad school as an intern for the production department at Disneyland. So for those out there that may be getting out of college, know that the intern program at Disneyland and at Walt Disney World are a great place to start out of school. So I've had a great opportunity to work in many different places across the country and around the world. In special events and spectaculars, as a stage manager, as a production manager, as a producer, and now I'm an executive producer working for live entertainment based in Anaheim.
And Stephen.
Well, I've had the opportunity to work for the company for over 40 years. And it's been the mailroom journey. When I was a young kid, I always wanted to work at Disneyland. And I found my way in when I was 17, even though I said I was 18, no one knew. And basically started in the art department and worked my way up. You know, I was kind of the crazy idea kid that would just come up with crazy things, and it just kept spiraling and moving. But I always knew I wanted to do nighttime shows. It was in my heart. I saw a halftime show for the Super Bowl, and I was hooked. I'm like, how do I do this? And the Walt Disney Company was doing a lot of them. So I just followed my dreams, which I encourage everybody to do. His dreams come true.
Absolutely.
Yes. So Steve, maybe we'll stay with you. Fireworks go back almost to the beginning at Disneyland, the earliest years.
They do. In 56, and it was Richard Sherman who told me this lovely story. Basically, he was on the street with Walt, and Walt said, we're going to give everybody a kiss goodnight. I know there's been a whole controversy over this. Was it true? Yes, it is true. Richard even wrote a song for us for the 60th called A Kiss Goodnight. And this was Walt's way of giving back. And there was a wonderful man at the time that Walt actually hired named Mickey Aronson. And Mickey was the first pyrotechnician. Great guy. I mean, his heart was in fireworks. And what was fun is we were working on some shows and we looked in the past, and basically when they used to shoot fireworks, they used to have a soundtrack, and you'd hear 5, 3, 2, 1, and they would hand launch these with actual flares. And so it was very sophisticated back then. That then turned into something more as we grew and kept going. Fantasy of the Sky was that kind of original thing. And as Walt said, this is our kiss goodnight. This is the last thing we leave our guests with before they head home.
Yeah, there's no audio on the film.
I know, I keep waiting for it to sing.
And no, in those early years, fireworks shows were largely colourful fireworks with Disney melodies behind them. When Sorcery in the Sky came along in 1990 at Disney's Hollywood Studios, or Disney MGM Studios as it was known at the time, we really started to see fireworks telling a story, starting to tell a story. And Don, that was your show. You tell us the story of sorcery, and how did you get fireworks to tell a story?
Well, Sorcerer came about because Entertainment had already purchased a large inflatable Sorcerer Mickey and needed to do something with him. So I get a call from Ron Logan who says, I've got this balloon and I'd like you to use it in the show. Fortunately, it turned out it was 1990, which is the 50th anniversary of the release of the original Fantasia. And there was so much raw material in the movie itself. I went to see the movie and got a lot of ideas from it. So the first thing I thought is, well, I've got to start the show with the orchestra tuning up. And then I want to, rather than use classical music that inspired animation, I want to use film music, popular tunes for movies, and use that to tell us what the fireworks should look like. And that's what we did. So we kind of take a chronological tour through film music and then divide the show into 2 sections and do the finale around Fantasia. And for the Fantasia, we of course choose the Toccata and Fugue, which is kind of signature. The Nutcracker Suite, and we end with Sorcerer Mickey, and he swells up over the Chinese theater, and we see his finger, and he shoots his famous pyro conclusion. Fantasia was the first commercial film to be released in stereo. So I thought, I've got to do a stereo soundtrack for this, and it's got to be glorious. We got to have a huge orchestra, which we recorded in Paris, France. We added sound effects. So every time there's something going on in the sky, for example, if we're hearing Puttin' on the Ritz, we're going to have not only crackling silver fireworks, but we're going to have tap dancing, and the tap dancers are going to clear off the stage in both directions. So we paint those kind of pictures as we make our way through movie music. And of course, we start in black and white, with black and white fireworks. The black is the easy part. And then when we get to The Wizard of Oz, we transition into full color. And from then on, it's a race to the finale. Stop for narration. We had Vincent Price do the narration. We were trying to get Jim Henson, and this was unfortunately just a couple of weeks before he passed. So we were not able to get Jim or do Kermit, which was our first choice. Anyway, so the end of the show, one of the things that I used to love about going to the movies was when you saw the trailers, the curtains were sort of closed in and you saw the small format trailer. And then right before the feature, the curtains would pull back and reveal the full width of the screen. So I wanted to do that at the end of the show. So we took not just the Chinese theater rooftop, but we expanded it over the Mermaid Theater and over the Monster Sound Show Theater. So we have a widescreen finale to go across all the rooftops and with the aerial shelves off in the distance. We have a multi-dimensional show, and there's even an homage to Mickey conducting the sea from one side and the other side, which we do with pyro. And then he shoots his finger and it's a done deal, right?
Make it sound so simple.
Oh, it was easy.
I want to pause because there's something important there, because storytelling, that is what we do with Disney. And that's something that's not typical to fireworks shows. And that's what sets us apart. And I think that that's the heart of any spectacular, that you can have the best technology, you can do really, really cool things, but if there's not a story there, there's no heart to it, and it falls flat.
That's right.
And that's what makes our fireworks shows. I can't go to see a regular fireworks show. If it's not a Disney fireworks show, I'm not interested because
Well, you know, Stephen, you've
we have a
yes.
we have story, right? That's the difference. That's the Disney difference.
So I mean, Steve, you firmly rooted fireworks shows at the Disney parks in storytelling. We have a couple of examples playing in the video here, but many, many more.
Yeah, it was funny. They asked me to do a fireworks show, and I'm like, why? I hate fireworks. And I kid you not, I went to the '84 Olympics and they were shooting all these fireworks for like an hour and a half, and I'm like, I could care less. So I never really watched them after that. And they said, we don't want a fireworks show, we want a story in the sky. And I said, I'll take that as a challenge. And so what I did is I went and looked at fireworks shows, and like this example of Wishes, we started to connect them in a different way. I treated them as actors. You know, I'm like, no, you're an actor, you're funny, you're gonna go in this section. You're scary, you're gonna go in this section. Oh, you're beautiful, you go in this section. And Wishes was a beautiful show that we did for Walt Disney World, where we actually took When You Wish Upon a Star and broke it up into different sections and used each verse of that song to tell that story. You know, Fate is kind, it brings to those who love, so it's romance. You know, Bolt Out of the Blue was, you know, the genie coming in to make magic and making chaos in your life if you want it. And so we then mirrored it with the pyrotechnics that became those actors to tell that story. And it kind of became this new thing. Around the world, they were doing things what are called like 9 lines or base lines that come up from the ground, as well as aerial shells. So we started to bring those into the park. Don did some phenomenal technology work on the shooting stars and the Mickey head that became icons in the park. And we start to put that all together to music, and music is a huge part of this. Music is the thing that grabs your heart, or breaks your heart, like mine. Music, if I can make people cry, that's what we want. Like the holiday show that we came in and did. It still runs to this year, every year, it runs every year. And we make it snow, but the big thing is that it touches people. And if you're standing there and you cry, which most adults do, even men cry, trust me, they cry. Then we've done our job, because we've moved you in a way that you didn't expect. You watch a fireworks show and you're crying at the end going, I'm crying, I don't know why. It's because it's the magic, and the magic can come in a way you've never expected it before. And, you know, I always said, we have this huge audience here. Let's leave them with something. You know, these taglines like, some imagination, huh? Or just remember, or just believe. These things that people carry home and will still remember to this day. You know, kids will come up and go, I remember seeing that show, just believe. And it's cute. But they do that. They still hear it in their mind, and they carry it forward. So we can do a lot with them, and we do.
And so Jennifer, you picked up that mantle with Remember Dreams Come True, a challenge for Disneyland's 50th, and sort of a new form of storytelling.
Yeah, Stephen and I worked on that together. I mean, it was remarkable in so many ways. The way we're seeing Tinkerbell right now, the way we saw Tinkerbell, the way we saw her fly, it was a new dynamic way that we hadn't seen before that was just remarkable. I mean, I remember Stephen and I being on Main Street on 5505 and people having tears in their eyes, and I'm not gonna lie, I did too. The fact that we had the fireworks all around us, the fact that the stretching walls for the Haunted Mansion, I mean, the soundtracks for the attractions, the music, the heart to it all. It was definitely something that the emotions of that show connected us in a way that's just really important. It's something that, it was true then and it's true now. There are so many things that I think people see divide us. And when it all boils down, there's much more that connects us. And that's what the park does for us. And that's what a nighttime spectacular in storytelling does. It connects us, and it shows us what's important. And the beauty of it and the technology, it's just a tool to storytell.
So you mentioned the Tinkerbell effect there. So, you know, I think Tinkerbell famously originated at Disneyland with retired circus performer Tiny Klein. She actually first performed it at the Hollywood Bowl in 1958 at a Disney concert, and in fact that photo on the left is from that night at the Bowl. And then Walt loved the idea and brought it to the park starting in 1961. And Tinkerbell's role has expanded and become more sophisticated through the years, and now other characters have been known to fly. Stephen, tell us about that.
So there was an interesting story. When we did the first Believe show at Disneyland, we flew Tinkerbell, but we moved her. We didn't have her start the show, we moved her to the end. She became the finale. And it was quite interesting because people were still waiting for Tinkerbell to go down the wire, and she didn't. She came at the very end as a new kind of twist to it and kind of gave it a new thing. And I was out watching the show one night, and I'll perform this for you because I haven't done this since 2005. And I know, it's me. So I was standing there, and this little girl next to me goes, Daddy, when's Tinkerbell gonna fly again? And I'm like, well, if she can get off the thing and go down, get her tag, go across the park in her black thing, go up to the elevator and fly again, then maybe she can, but we don't have that much time. So what we did is Tinkerbell used to do this. Tinkerbell would fly from the Matterhorn down, and she would hit a trampoline piece on the other side. So she'd be like, so that was Tinkerbell's journey. What we started to do was say, could we make the world's biggest, and it was at the time, fly rig, that could have Tinkerbell come out and she could basically fly left, right. It was like a Peter Pan effect. And we just threw it out there and said, can we do it? And through our lovely engineering, we did. We were able to do the world's biggest fly rig out there in its craziness. And now we fly other characters too. You'll see the House from Up come in. You'll see here like the Blue Fairy from Wondrous Journeys. It became a tool for us to now feature other things. Like if you've seen the Halloween show, you'll see Zero fly out. Zero actually doesn't have a performer in it. It's actually just a flying prop. But what it did is it expanded, it gave us a way to do things that's totally new and totally different and surprise the audience. I mean, my favorite thing was when we brought the Tinkerbells out, we dropped them at 80 feet a second. And so when they would rehearse, they were used to being in a room like this, and they'd fly around, it was great. When they did their first flight, you'd see Tinkerbell going, ah, ah, and they would just go crazy. And we lived for that moment every night. Somebody would get on the rig, we're like, here we go.
Oh, even our guests the first night would gas.
Yeah, it's fun. So, we surprise you, we change things up on you. I try, in our teams do, we try to keep the traditions because I think they're so important. I think it's giving back from generation to generation, but we're always trying to make it something new for the newest generation.
Yeah, you have to build.
Yeah.
So one of the more unusual characters that has flown was during the summer of 1991, a real Rocketeer flew during Sorcery in the Sky at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and we have a clip of that, so take a look at this. The video recording does not do justice to just how loud that jetpack was.
But you know what's fun about that is that was probably astounding in that moment.
Yes.
And what's really great is there's something that we're doing today that there's an audience that 30 years from now is going to giggle about.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic that we're going to get so much further someday.
Well, all these guys were blonde because they were making the fuel out of hydrogen peroxide, I believe, in the back. And it was the weirdest thing ever because basically, don't go in the back, it's all that hydrogen peroxide fuel, don't go near it. We're like, okay. But here's all these blonde people coming out and flying away. But it was so cool, just to see that because there's no lines, there's no skyhook flying around. They're flying them around.
We would not get that past safety today.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
Yeah, so one of the next innovations, projection. So projection has really sort of added to and enhanced fireworks shows. Steve, maybe talk a little bit about that.
Oh boy, projection. Projection was interesting. When we did the 50th show, it was so popular that we had to expand. We needed a way to move guests in the park because everyone was trying to stand on Main Street because somebody thought it was a good idea to do the stretching room in the middle of the park. So what we did is we started to project on Small World, and Small World truly was the first big projection surface that was seamless, and it coordinated with the show. It then expanded out to Fantasmic. But what it did is it expanded our use of storytelling. And it's a blessing and a curse, I will tell you. It's very difficult to work with. We're working, Bob Iger sent me a message one day and he goes, why can't we do this? And I said, because we don't have a white mosque with all white outside buildings and we can project anything on it. We have castles that are multicolored and it's frustrating, I will say this. You sit there and you're like, okay, that's gonna look, no, it doesn't look great. So how do we make it look great? And we're probably, we're the leaders in this field right now because we're working on a show right now in Tokyo that's kind of with laser projections, state of the art, everything. And it's still a learning curve every time you do these. But what it did is it allowed us to now expand the storytelling. But when you do that, you always have to balance it. That when you watch a show, you can have it be so overdone in a sense that there's projection going on and there's fireworks going off and people they lose it a little bit. It's like it's too much to look at. So the trick is to use the castles or whatever we're projecting on as another storytelling device. You make it a place. You now transform and take the people to that place they've never seen before. And when the castle can transform and become something totally new like it is here, it's a wonderment. It's a wonder thing because, wow. I mean, kids especially. Kids go, wow, how did they do that? And our goal is to make it be a place where only Disney could do that.
And sometimes the projection is the show, and we have a couple of examples in the video here, but Jennifer, you created one of the earliest projection shows, The Magic, The Memories, and You.
Yeah, this one was this was definitely one of the pioneering shows of projection, and it was tricky for a multitude of reasons. This was, and actually I had to really dig back in my memory on this, because as you note, it was 2011, so it was a minute ago. But it was a partnership with Walt Disney World. And so the images you see are the castle at Walt Disney World, but it was also done at Disneyland at Small World. So you've got Portrait, the castle at Walt Disney World, and you've got Landscape, Small World. And we had one soundtrack, but the same show, same concept, one show director to design the same show, same look. So this. So it was definitely an interesting challenge. But then you fold into the fact that the concept was to take images that were taken that day at the park, take 200 images, and project guest faces in the show each day, new faces into the show. So you would see you were a guest in the park and you could potentially see your image up in the show. Very cool, fun concept. I mean, who wouldn't love to see that? I think that's a great idea. The technology wasn't quite there at that point, so it was a Herculean effort every single day. I mean, I can't remember the exact number, but I think we had like 30 people every day, like even more out in the park. Our wonderful photo pass cast members were out there taking the pictures. They had to make sure that they had the right image size, like portrait or landscape, to fit into the box that was, into those frames on there. They had to be the right, content in terms of the theming of what the scene was. They had to fit the right color, content. It had to fit, it had to be, appropriate image, nothing that was, not quality Disney. And then we had to load it into the programs, and it was 2011 software. So it was a Herculean task. And that show, I think, ran just under a year because it was really, really complex to do. It was a lot of fun. I think guests really, really enjoyed. Did guests out there, do you remember the show? Does anyone remember the show?
Yeah.
Okay. It was a very cool concept because I think that it was like, I remember standing out there and I could remember standing out there and hearing people around me react to seeing their face out there. I mean, that's a really special moment. And I really do love the concept of it because, again, it goes back to the story of it. It's, what are we all doing in the park every day? We are making memories. And we are capturing those memories, and we are walking away with, like, yes, you might get your ears, you might get a t-shirt, But those photos are something that I think that we all cherish. I know I have many photos. I mean, the photo on my intro slide, when I was trying to find something, you know, to put on that slide, I came across, you know, I was 3 and I was in the park, and that was a precious memory to me. Like, those are the things that are important, and those are the stories that we tell. It was a really fun show. But it was Herculean. And I don't even know if I'd want to tackle it today, because it was a lot.
Well, I think maybe we're going to hear some more Herculean stories now, because we're going to pivot to nighttime shows on water.
Yes.
Some of Disney's most iconic shows. And after the electrical water pageant, that genre really took off at Epcot with a series of shows in Epcot's opening years. Don, those were all your creations.
Oh boy.
Tell us the stories of the early Epcot shows.
Well, the very first water show at Epcot was supposed to be finished for the dedication in October of 1982. And earlier in 1982, I got a call from Bob Yanni, who said, "I'm doing this show on the Epcot Lagoon, and I need 22 minutes of synthesized classical music. Can you do that?" I said, "Okay, yeah, I've done classical synthesized soundtracks before. I can do that." He says, "I also want you to be the programming consultant, and I want you to take care of the light screens and the slide projectors and the fountains and the barges in general." So I said, "Okay, I'll do that. I'll be in Florida anyway. The music will be done at that point. No problem." So he had 9 barges, 5 of the projection barges, you can see one in the center here, and 4 of the fountain and firework barges, arrayed in a giant proscenium stretch across from Mexico to Canada. It was a huge, huge physical presentation, and it was quite impressive, but it didn't work very well because the technology was slides. It was a slideshow, and the content that Bob wanted to present, the concept was great for World Showcase. It was, let's look at pageants and celebrations from around the world, from all of history, none of which had photographs. It was all artwork from various historical books and so on, and so he had scanned all of these images from books, and the detail was so intense and the contrast was so poor that the projectors on the projection barges just were not up to the task. As you can see, there's very little that you can tell what's going on the screens. And we stood at the North Shore one night with all of the executives during a dress rehearsal, and we started the show run, and immediately 2 fireworks barges fired every cue at the very first instant. And it was one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen. But it was not a good way to start a show in front of executives. So when the slides came on, you couldn't see them. And the discussion after that rehearsal was, I don't think this show is going to last. And indeed, it ran for fewer than 2 weeks. Before we shut down. But in adversity, there is opportunity, is there not? Disney had built all these barges and thought, we're going to throw it away, we're going to do something with it. They thought they would have a competition, invite some producers to come down from various companies and do a pitch. We did a meeting, we showed them the barges, I played them my music soundtrack because I didn't want to destroy the music soundtrack. I thought, a lot of work went into this, let's keep it. So we showed them all the hardware, played them the music, they went away for 2 weeks, came back, and each did their pitch. Meanwhile, my friend Adam Bezark and I got up to some skullduggery. We created our own pitch, we redesigned the show, reoriented the barges. Rather than 2 small separated projection barges, we put them together and made a super barge. We separated, we took the separate fountain and fireworks barges and we put them together in a pair. So we could do different kinds of visual presentations with fireworks product and with the fountains and symmetry and so on. And decided that the best thing that we could do with the graphics was to go high contrast, brilliant color, and make it as visible as possible. We brought an art director down to Florida, we did some tests, and we found that as long as we stuck to high contrast, high color images, and this is one of the original artwork cells from the show that I have saved. You can tell it's an animation cell because on the back it's painted in. We redid the entire first movement of the show, kept the music, kept the 3 segments. We called it Land, Sea, Sky. Land was the story of life on Earth. Sea was the fountains, and we worked the fountain programming to the edge of capability. And then we had the standard fireworks that had been part of Bob's show. So we had a 3-movement show, and this show played the first summer of 1983, and it was a crowd success. It was a smash. And that's what killed it. You have to understand that with 9 barges spread from Canada to Mexico, everybody on the south side of World Showcase is going to come north to get a viewing spot for the show. So all the shops and the restaurant owners on the South Shore are saying, we cannot have this. You must make a new show. It shall be in the round. Now, aside from the fact that going into the round format was going to weaken the overall presentation, because you no longer have this vast image. You have something in front of you, and then if you happen to be on the corner, there's nothing in front of you, and so you're kind of watching sideways. It's a very different kind of thing. But that was the birth of Laserphonic Fantasy. Now, lasers seemed to be the catchword around Epcot. I think a laser company had volunteered to come and do a demo. So they came down and they were shooting lasers above World Showcase, and just by chance, I happened to say, let's shoot this at the backside of water and see what it looks like. From the front, it didn't look like anything at all, but from the back, we see the skater image, the pose there. It was glorious. It looked kind of like a hologram, and it came out of nowhere. And when the pavilions were shut off, it just kind of hung there in the background and looked like this. It was a magical moment in the show. But to pull this off, we had to put a bunch of high-powered lasers on a barge in the middle of the lagoon, which meant we had to run massive power cables. We had a technician in the laser barge who had to stand in a very specific spot so he didn't slice off his legs. If he moved, the switch would go off and the beams would be fine, but he had to be in a very, very specific position in order to operate the show. So we had our laser graphics shooting above the fountain barges from the center of the lagoon, and we put laser beams up in American Adventure, Canada, and Mexico for aerial beams. And that was Laserphonic Fantasy, and we kept my music soundtrack another year. It did very well. It ran actually for 3 years. And then along came Illuminations.
Woo!
Now, Illuminations is essentially Laserphonic Fantasy plus pavilions. We got, again, I got a phone call. We got a title for a show. What is it going to be? Okay, Illuminations, it's pretty obvious it's going to be lights on the buildings. That's fine. We can do that. We had Ken Dresser, who was the original designer of the Main Street Electrical Parade, do light screens that would come up on the rooftops. We actually did some very simple projection mapping because this is 1987, as you can see here on Germany. We had 2 looks on Germany. We had a toy shop, and there's a cuckoo clock as one of the light screens. So every pavilion had some light screens, and then we added searchlights that were automated that could do a swoop down and point at each pavilion as it was being introduced. And it became a sparkling abstract expedition around World Showcase. Now, the big challenge on this one is we've got a synthesized musical soundtrack that I love, obviously, having done it. And Michael Eisner loved it. He called it magic in a bottle. And we couldn't do the synthesized because we had to do all of this culturally appropriate music for the second movement of the show for our tour around World Showcase. So it was finally decided that we would re-record the arrangements that Michael loved and do a new second movement for the pavilions, which is what we did. And that solved the problem, and Illuminations ran quite a while, and it was a pretty popular show.
But then, a show that played for 20 years.
Oof. Yeah, I came back to do Reflections of Earth. This was, I think, one of the greatest storytelling opportunities that I could have imagined. One of the things that Bob Yanni always talked about was what are we going to do in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? And he had a Millennium Plan in the 80s. I never got to see it, but it was there. He was the one who dreamt up the bicentennial and America on Parade. So I had in the back of my head, you better start thinking about the millennium like in 1985. So I had done some work on this, and I thought this is a great story to tell because we have the perfect setting. We have people from all cultures, all languages, coming to Epcot to see something where we don't need to talk to them. We can just show them things that make them belong on the planet with their fellow people. And so we tell the story of the planet Earth, from an abstract creation into all of evolution, the arrival of humanity, the building of architecture, and then we come up to a transition in the show where we pose the question, what's going to happen next? And we put little candles on the water and we bring the torches back on and we say, we go on. What's so important about life on Earth? We're here for this unique moment in time, the millennium. And what are we going to do? Well, we got to move forward. Every evening brings an ending. Every day becomes an opportunity. And so, in terms of storytelling, this is one of my favorite moments, was to be able to direct this show and put it on the lagoon, and especially to see it survive for 20 years. Very, very proud of that show and happy to be here to talk about it today. As Graham said, it's approaching the 25th anniversary celebration.
Yes, it's a couple months away.
And for those of you that were at the ceremony last night, I started getting texts at about 9:30 or whatever. They're singing your song. They're singing your song. My phone was going crazy. That brought tears to my eyes because it was such a special project for me to be part of.
Well, congratulations. No, we're not going to have time to dive into this today, unfortunately, but go find these shows on the internet. The Mediterranean Harbour at Tokyo Disney Sea is a fantastic setting and has hosted nighttime shows from the park's opening year. This one, Disney Sea Symphony from 2001, and a real favourite of mine, Bravissimo from 2004. Go find this one on the internet. A little closer to home, the Rivers of America, also a great location for a show. And Don, you were involved in creating a concept for a river show quite a bit before Fantasmic?
This actually was created in mid-1987. While my friend Adam and I were designing illuminations for Epcot, we were asked to go to Disneyland and think about an illuminations for Disneyland. And at the urging of Dennis Despy, who was our vice president at the time, he said, make it edgy. Come up with something that we've never seen at the park, but make it appropriate to the area. So as we looked around the park, it was obvious that the river had the most viewing capability. And we thought, Haunted Mansion? Let's bring the ghosts out of the Haunted Mansion over to the island and take over the island. As you can see, we had artwork done for Ghost Pirate Ship, and we also had a finale based around flaming fire on the water and a giant character looming high overhead. In this case, it was going to be Chernobog, as you can see here. So we had all this great artwork done, and we had presented all the way up to Dick Nunis, and everybody thought, oh, this is going to be amazing, going to be amazing. And then it got shelved for a period of time for Disneyland's 35th. And then Barnett Ritchie, legend Barnett Ritchie, had a different vision, and she mentioned it casually to Michael Eisner, and he said, great, do that. So Fantasmic was born.
Yes. And I expect you folks have seen, Fantasmic at Disneyland. Or at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Stephen, you adapted the show for Tokyo Disney Sea.
We did. I mean, Barnett was an amazing visionary. The actual show was entitled Imagination, actually. Correct. That's why you hear at the very top of the show, imagination, because that's what Ford never wanted to call it, but marketing didn't. And I remember they were passing around, okay, what can we call it? And everyone was throwing out names, and Fantasmic was born. When we were looking at Disney Sea, they wanted to infuse it with more Disney itself. So I said, why don't we bring Fantasmic and do it in a new way for you? And as Don will confess to this, they wanted it in the round, which is a pain in the, let's just put it that way. It is very difficult to work in the round, I will tell you. It's because you have to, there's so many different factors to it. But what was nice was that we developed these new barges. We kind of took the essence of what Fantasmic was and brought it to life on the lagoon there in a very, very different way. So we still did the kind of basic journey, but then we tailored it for the Japanese themselves, because they love certain things. There was a center barge that was like I took one of those drink cups you take camping, and we flipped it upside down, and the barge actually would come up and become different shapes, and it would have 360 projection. Within those barges you see floating around is the entire cast. The poor cast had to live inside and change costumes 12 times. They had to come up and down and do this and do that. Those crazy monkeys, we had to do the neon monkeys. I remember Barnett came into the art department once with my boss Claire. She sat at his table and she wrote out Fantasmic. I literally sat there and watched her write it out. And she goes, "Can you give this to Claire?" And I said, "Sure." And I'm like, "Neon monkeys? What is this?" I mean, it was crazy. And somewhere I still have a copy of it, because I thought it was just so outrageous. But what was great about this version was it took what Barnett did and just took it to the next level. So we had inflatable things that appeared, things came out of nowhere. So the show kept transforming in front of your eyes. And what was great when they were working on Tokyo Disney Sea, I know Don had a part in this, to put fire in the lagoon and to use that as an element. So we were lucky enough to have that. And we did a different dragon there. We did a magic mirror, but then the magic mirror would enhance itself. You'd see the dragon, and then the dragon came through the mirror. And it was just the giant head. It was about 70 feet tall. And it really was a fun show to do, but tricky. Yes. Because, of course, when I was there, we had the 9.0 earthquake. And so trying to do a show from America, because they flew us all back, they closed the parks down, and we eventually got out there to actually do rehearsals and put it on. But it was quite a challenging time. I mean, I love the Japanese. I love them to death. If you get a chance to go to Tokyo, please do. You will absolutely adore it.
Beautiful park.
Yeah.
Now, we have another great lagoon not too far from here at California Adventure. And Jennifer, you have been involved with World of Color right from the very beginning in 2010. Tell us the World of Color story.
Stephen and I both. World of Color is definitely from Stephen's brain, but I am very, very honored to have been involved with World of Color since its inception, and that is definitely a deep, I have deep pride to be involved with that show. It was another I don't know where this came from your brain, Stephen. And I think we slayed many dragons to get this show
we did.
produced. When Disney California Adventure was conceived, the concept for the park, as many of you might know, was not meant to have a nighttime spectacular show in that lagoon. So the infrastructure was not there. So we had to be very crafty as we looked to put the infrastructure in there, and it made it really difficult to try to conceive that show. It took 3.5 years, actually maybe 4.
Oh yeah, it was 4.
To try to get that show into existence, and it's more than a football field in terms of the square footage of what that. What the fountains are. It's 1,200 fountains. It's massive. It's a technical it's a technical nightmare to keep that show running.
It's NASA. I mean, when you go backstage, you guys never see this. We call it ice skating. It looks perfect out there. It's doing its thing. You walk back into these rooms, and there are racks and racks of computers running. And I swear it's NASA, because they have these huge, giant pieces. There's 6 technicians running the show. And we never thought we would sell this, honestly. I just put it out there. We're like, oh, World of Color. And Bob Iger said, he goes, when? We'd never done a fountain show like this before, so we went out and learned it. And overnight, we transformed fountain technology on its head, because our lighting guys said, well, a fountain's just a moving light. Yeah. So we took out all the infrastructure that everybody else had, and we put it's called the Grand MA. It's a console that can run lights, and they made it run fountains now. They added some new effects, and overnight we can now program an entire show faster than anybody else could in the world. And now it's the standard that everybody's using, because it transformed everything that was being done.
Jennifer, earlier you mentioned music. So all of the shows we're talking about today have music, and for the most part that is recorded specially for the show. And you shared some images with us of the recording session for World of Color. Tell us what those sessions are like.
Yes, the original World of Color show was recorded at Abbey Road in London, which was a truly magical, life-changing experience to be in the room with those world-class musicians creating that music. The absolute joy of hearing them put that music into the world it was phenomenal. I consider music, it's the heartbeat of the show.
All the emotion.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like storytelling is the key component, but music really is the essential ingredient to just bring it to life. I mean, it's everything. And that session was pure magic.
It's glorious. It really was. They are the best players in the world. I mean, basically, this room that you're seeing is where every John Williams score was ever done for, Star Wars and Superman and Indiana Jones. I mean, they were all recorded here. And it was like, and the Beatles actually worked in studio too. So it has this legendary kind of calling about it. And just to be there, we were just thrilled.
You felt it in the air. It was absolutely amazing. And you could see the musicians every day when they walked in, they were joyous. Like they were just so happy to play our music and bring it into the world.
They said, we don't want to play this, I won't tell you the composer, but this score, I would go, they go, we don't know what measure we're on anymore, because they all were the same. And they go, we love playing your music because it's show music, and it's in their heart, and it challenged them. They go, we don't get to play this anymore. So just having that quality translated to America, I think was really great.
And so often they got it on the first take.
Yep, they did.
It was amazing.
Well, that's the worst part of recording at Abbey Road is because
Right.
you're done. We did Reflections of Earth there, and it had booked the whole day, and by lunchtime we're done.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just want to say, "Well, do it
play it
again,"
again.
just to do it.
A couple more times for protection.
So our nighttime spectaculars are getting sort of more, spectacular. And Stephen, you recently debuted Luminous, the Symphony of Us at Epcot.
We did. Well, and I will say, following the footsteps of Don, this was not an easy task. We had done, for the 100th, we had done, or 50th, I can never remember, 50th, we had done one show, and then it transformed into this show, which was Luminous, Luminous, basically, the Symphony of Us is all about the human connection and how we're born into this world, and we have family, and there's loss in our lives, but at the end, it's really about all of us. That when we join together and we become like a symphony, we all play different parts in the orchestra, but when we play together, we can create beautiful music. And this was one I was adamant about. I said, we are not doing projection in this show. We are not doing it. We need to let the guest basically paint what they see in the show. And it was, and Josh was great about it. He goes, I agree, let's just try this and see how it works. Because I didn't want to start putting images that would then influence what you think loss is or what you think love is. Let you become part of that moment and then just experience it in a new way. Of course, it's in the round, which was also very fun. And just, it was a delight. Again, very fast kind of process in this to get it done and finished, but at least this one wasn't during the pandemic, which was another. Trying to get stuff done during pandemics is not an easy task, especially boats and things and moving electrical, and so these do become labors of love. I mean, you have no idea how much time it takes and hours that we all put into this, and it's because we love it. We really do. That we look at these and say, how can we leave the world a better place? And I'm not just saying that to say it. Like, how can we give something back? And how can Disney, give that to you as a present every night? And so we do. Luminous really is a delightful show. It'll keep growing. We developed it to be changeable, so you'll probably see things coming in the future. I didn't announce anything. I'm not saying anything. But probably in the future you will see other things come in and start to influence what Luminous becomes.
And you know, another amazing show you recently debuted in the round at Tokyo Disney Sea, Believe Sea of Dreams. Unfortunately, we're not going to have a lot of time to get into this today. I think we would encourage our audience to go find this on the internet. An awful lot of what you've talked about here, about the complexity of a show in the round.
This is the pinnacle of it. This was basically my 40 years of, hey, let's do a show in the round. There's basically floating barges that are 360 projection. There's cast inside. It took the best of, and I will tell you this story. The Japanese had come. We had pitched them one thing. They were flying back, and I told our team, I said, the only thing we need to do is project on the hotel. So now send this to them, so when they land in Tokyo, they'll know we're going to do a different show, and they'll come and yell at us. So we did. We said we need to project on the hotel and make it the backdrop. So we had the best of projection. We had the best of the water experiences. We had the best of live characters and everything else we had developed over time. And it really is a lovely show. It's all about never give up on a dream and never stop believing in a wish. And it was all give your wish a second chance, because it's always there. And if you give up on it, come back to it, because there's always time. And remember that. There's always time to make any wish come true.
Now, the newest technology in nighttime storytelling is drones. And Disney Springs had a drone show for the holiday season in 2016 at Starbright Holidays. And this year, a more elaborate show, Disney Dreams That Soar, is playing. Disneyland Paris has really been pushing the envelope with the drone shows. Disney Delight was their show for the 30th anniversary in 2022. Avengers Power the Night played last year, and the Disney Electrical Sky Parade is playing this summer. Stephen, how do you see drones adding to the storytelling of nighttime shows?
Yeah, we originally worked with Intel when they first brought the drones out. They were supposed to premiere at this water thing across the street we won't talk about. But it's interesting because there's so many restrictions in America with the use of drones that we're finally getting a chance to actually look at them and use them. We did a lot of pioneering work on this initially, and have actually a lot of copyrights on it that we don't even enforce because so many people are using these. And I think it's a great alternative to fireworks. We always look at that. We look at the environment. How can we do things and tell stories? I will just say this, I've seen the newest versions of drones and where they're headed. It's beautiful, it's spectacular. They're really jumping into this, and I think we've just hit the beginning of it and where it can go. Because it's one of those things where you start to look at a technology like fountains or fireworks or lights, and you say, oh, what if we did this with it? And out of nowhere, you transform something into something that no one had ever seen before. And like this, people are mesmerized. I'm up in Pasadena, and they had done a thing for America's Got Talent. No one announced it. On basically above this, the school became a giant show, and everyone was like, jumped out of their cars and started to film it. Because it has a magical quality about it. So you'll see more of this in the future with integration. And again, the big thing about technology is it should feel integrated. It should feel like it's all one. It doesn't just want to feel like, oh, we slapped this on the castle and here we go. So it's really you'll see a lot of this coming in very clever new ways.
Since you might not be as familiar with the drone shows, we thought we'd play you a really quick clip of one from the Disney Electrical Sky Parade in Paris. This is the finale of the show. For a sense of scale, the castle there is about 150 feet tall. If you look really closely as the map is forming, you will see little extra points of light marking the location of each of the 6 Disney resorts around the world. That is a Disney detail. Take a look. interested, you can find the whole show on the Disney Parks YouTube channel. So final thoughts, we're almost out of time. Don, what are you excited about in the next generation of nighttime entertainment?
Boy, today was the closing ceremonies of the Paris Olympics, which I haven't seen yet. But one of the things that really struck me from the opening ceremonies was the mechanical horse coming down the river. This is a kind of technology that has been so difficult to do, to be able to put a moving craft into the water with no wake, fully self-powered, self-maneuverable. And I'm thinking back, Bob Yanni talked for many years about doing a sky parade. Well, now with drones, we have a sky parade. What we don't have is a river parade. But there's a possibility there. I was really impressed with that.
Jennifer?
I'm actually excited about all of you out there. I can't quite see, but it looks like it's a very full house out there. And whenever we work on these spectaculars, we're just individual contributors of very large teams. And we're one generation. There's generations behind us that need to pick up the mantle because we need more spectaculars in the future. So I want to see the next generation. So I'm hoping that all of you out there, I'm hoping that there's interest to pick up the mantle and be the next innovators, to pick up the mantle, to be the next magic makers. So I'm hoping that there's interest out there because I see you out there. Yeah? So as I said, you know, internships, DisneyJobs.com, I'm here shelling. We have all types of roles, you know, I mean, we need designers, we need technicians. There's all kinds of opportunities out there, and the fact that you're here and you're interested in listening, anyone who has ideas, who has, you know, an interest in this, you all have ideas. We want you all. So that's what I'm interested in.
Brilliant. And Stephen, your thoughts for the future of Disney Nighttime Spectacular?
And she's correct. I mean, I've had different people come into my office and they go, and this is how scary it is. They're like, I saw the World of Color show and I knew what I wanted to do. And you're like, well, what grade were you in? And you don't realize, I mean, World of Color's written, what, 15 years now or something? I mean, it's amazing how long these shows run. But, you know, another kid from MIT, everyone kept saying, you need to meet this kid. And this kid came in and he rolled out this big piece of paper and he goes, I dissected one of your shows. I want to see if I'm doing it right. And I said, you're hired. And I wasn't kidding, because so many people come in and go, teach me how to do this. And I go, you can't. You have to teach yourself. Like, my uncle used to play for the Chargers, and we used to go to the football games, and I hated it. I'm like, oh, football, ugh. And I was really young, and I would go to support him, but then one time we went to a thing called the Super Bowl, and it was a halftime show. And this show took place, probably Bob Yachty had done it.
Probably.
And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do something like this. The joke is, to this day, I've never done a halftime show for the Super Bowl. But the hope is still there. But, and honestly, when I say this, please, what we call pass it on. So if you can make somebody's day, go make it. You know, if you have an extra 10 minutes, just put that time and energy into it so you can change the world. And that's, you know, Disney's not out to change the world. We're out to kind of make people happy. But, you know, again, if we can leave these nighttime shows with a message and something that you can carry on, that makes you smile, that makes you go home and just be a better person, then, you know, pass that along. And we can make the world a better place, I really think. So, thank all of you.
Here. So we are out of time, unfortunately. Before we say goodnight, a few thank yous to some people behind the scenes who have been part of making the nighttime magic appear for you today. The amazing Walt Disney Archives team, special shout outs there to Julia Vargas, Ty Popko, Mike Buckoff, and Becky Klein. The film and video that you saw came from a number of different collections and vaults around the company. So thank you to Elise Diamandis, Dina Schultz, Ed Brown and Jay Hatcher in Florida, Barry Myers and Blake Glenn in California, and Johan Plaza, Marie Massaron and Emily Kine at Disneyland Paris. Two extra special people deserving extra special thank you. Impresarios extraordinaire, Kevin Kern at the Walt Disney Archives and Sean Slater in Disney Live Entertainment. None of this would have been possible. A thank you again to Jim Cummings for giving us that goosebump opening. course, our amazing Creative Brain Trust here on the stage, Stephen, Jennifer, and Jeff. And thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining us here today. We hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon here at D23.